CBOT soybean contracts were higher, while soy oil and meal contracts were trading on both sides of unchanged. The November contract was up 7 cents to $8.39 per bushel. Trading is expected to be choppy today, as it still doesn't look like the U.S.-China trade war is going to end anytime soon. U.S. corn futures were higher this morning. The December contract was up 5 cents to $3.61. Storms moving across the Corn Belt from northern Missouri to Wisconsin are expected to bring heavy rains to the mid to upper Mississippi River valleys over the next week. Warm, wet conditions are expected for the next few weeks in the Corn Belt. U.S. wheat futures were higher this morning. The December contract in Chicago gained 10 cents to $5.45. Kansas City was up 9 cents to $5.50 per bushel, and Minneapolis December wheat rose 12 cents to $5.96. StatsCan pegged Canadian wheat production at 29.984 million tons, which was on the higher end of pre-report estimates. There are continued concerns about Russian wheat exports. There are reports that the Russian Ag Ministry will hold a grain export discussion on Monday. The EU Commission has cut its soft wheat production estimate by 3.6% to 128.8 million tons. American markets and the canola market will be closed Monday for the Labor Day holiday. That's a look at the ICE Futures, canola, and U.S. markets for Friday morning, August 31st in Winnipeg. For Markets Farm, I'm Ashley Robinson.
Disc-bind center pivot disc mower conditioners give you closer cutting and faster dry down. Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John can tell you more about New Holland's design features like the Momax 2 cutter bar. It features larger discs that cut more closely with less cutter bar tilt. And the wide dry conditioning systems that are 125 inches wide for consistent dry down and maximum hay quality. Visit Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John and ask about the center pivot disc-bind disc mower conditioners from New Holland.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Boland.
Welcome back to Trev Talks. We are here for a special episode. Those of you on Facebook or have been following the news lately, you've seen all the posts and all the information that came out in the last couple days regarding Trans Mountain. Of course, that includes both the approval for the sale of that happened from the shareholders, and of course the courts squashing the Supreme Court squashing the approval of the NEB in order to go ahead. And joined with us today is our special guest, Allan Yu. Allan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Good.
Yes, I can.
Good morning.
Very much
welcome
for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the show. You know what? It's great. So for those of you that don't know, Allan is the founder and chairman of FSJ for LNG. So you have been very, very active in the last few years as far as the LNG component goes, and of course resources in the north, and explaining both to Ottawa and the south, what it is that we do and what you are so passionate about.
Yes, I've been busy doing that. As a matter of fact, I just came from Vancouver, where I had some talk with some friends and just enlightened them as to how the resources are, the life in the north, and why we need the Trans Mountain and why we need LNG.
Well, and that's the big thing, right? So I'd seen one of your posts yesterday, and it really resonated with me both as a citizen, both corporate and in the province. And it said for more than a year you've been clamoring for better organization structure for the pro-hydrocarbon side. Let's face it, we are gunned out at that aspects. We seem to be content with activities that don't make out of the choir of the church. I've reached out to bigger regional groups and they agree with me. Too many egos in the room are holding this back. Truth hurts, eh? And I love that quote because it's you know what? Everything I've seen, and this goes back for 20 years, and it's getting worse, and it's more of the no's and not enough of the yeses. And I know, with your page and with the information that you've been sharing with people on why be pro LNG and why stand up as pro LNG or pro resources and natural gas and oil. And I mean, this includes all of it. And we need people to start getting involved, standing up and saying, yes, this is my province, this is my country, this is my children's future, and this is why we need to do it.
Yes, that is so true. And that is why I started Fort St. John for LNG. My first op-ed with Alaska Highway News was entitled, "The Forces of the Yes Should Be Heard." And this is why we started Fort St. John for LNG, to give social license to LNG coming from Fort St. John. But we have quickly achieved that. So what more can we do? So we decided to travel to Ottawa and give our voice that our workforce is suffering in Fort St. John and we need LNG. We also achieved that with the environmental clearance for the Pacific Northwest LNG. And I got in touch with other grassroots movements, CAP and other national organizations, and the weak link that I saw in our group is that we have no organization whatsoever. We are, as I said in what I wrote yesterday, we are outgunned, we are outvoiced, and a fine example of the result of this is what happened yesterday with Trans Mountain. We hear in the news that the First Nations who are against Trans Mountain are represented in the news article. However, the First Nations, those who are in favor of Trans Mountain or Kinder Morgan pipeline, were never interviewed, they were never given voice. If we have a national or one solid group that would represent the pro-hydrocarbon group, we should be able to address and nip in the bud whatever things that the environment part of or the opposition throws at us.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. And it's, yesterday I received some emails from some of the, anti-LNG and anti-Trans Mountain people that are funded from, larger corporations, larger companies, and it's this unlimited funding for them to fight this on social media and fight this and put the no voice together. And, and I'm reading them and I'm deleting them and I'm reading them and I'm deleting. And then I thought, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop reading them and deleting them, and I'm going to start reading them and replying to them. And and I started to reply to these ones. And it's funny because, I instantly came off some of their lists, and the replies were as easy as what a sad day for Canada, what a sad day for British Columbia, what a sad day for all of us. And it's funny because, all of that takes place, 48 minutes ago on social media, on Facebook. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is posting about Canada's auto industry. Nothing about Trans Mountain, nothing about Kinder Morgan, nothing about LNG, nothing about the North, nothing about the West. Everything's about, powering to the leading edge of research and innovation of our auto industry. And it takes me back because I get that is an important industry for Ontario. I get that's an important industry for our relations between Ontario and the United States. When you look at what Trans Mountain meant to Alberta, what it meant to British Columbia, and therefore what it means to Canada in ordering, being able to get our market to somebody other than, or our products to market other than the United States, he doesn't seem to get it. He doesn't seem to understand. And, I watched Premier Notley's, address last night when this all came down about how, the people are angry and I'm angry. And I'm watching this, I'm thinking, you guys had years to get this figured out. You had years to ensure that all of the NEB, research was done, that the government research was done, that hopefully there was some sort of a clause in the contract for them buying this pipeline to give them the time to get the proper approvals in place. Yet here we sit as Canada behind the 8 ball with people just scratching their head wondering what's going on. At what point in time can we come together to get this done?
Yeah, so true. That is so true, Trevor. And you know what? Stephen Simons and I are working on this. And one of the things that I'm saying to national organizations is that we should have a spokesperson, someone who will talk for the industry, someone who can stand up to Justin Trudeau, someone who can just call a conference and say things in behalf of the pro-hydrocarbon group. And it's no secret that I have been saying that, in my opinion, we should have Brad Wall. If Brad Wall is on our side representing the pro-hydrocarbon group, he could just, even if Justin Trudeau, even if Notley, even if our BC Premier ignores, then he can call a conference and give our voice and give our side and start with, defending. We are on the defensive, so we should start with defending our natural resource industry.
Oh, I agree. And you know what, to me, you look at the politicians such as, you know, the Premier of Alberta and the Prime Minister and even our own Premier here in British Columbia. And, you know, all of this carbon tax has been talked about lately. And one of Premier Notley's comments last night was that, you know, they're going to keep the carbon tax that was Alberta made, and they're going to keep that in place, even though the promise of the day was that was because of this pipeline, and it was a trade-off one for the other, which now appears that it's not happening the way it was promised. And, you know, and then she says they're gonna kibosh you know, the national carbon tax model that the Prime Minister's put out until this pipeline is fixed. And at the end of the day, if we can't get these projects approved and we can't get shovels in the ground, why is anybody worried about carbon tax? You know, let's scrap the carbon tax altogether, as we start seeing, you know, Ontario's done now under Premier Ford, and we start to see some of the Atlantic provinces go, wait a minute, why are we getting involved in this? Let's focus on what the actual issue is. The actual issue is getting these projects in the ground, getting them shovel ready, moving dirt, guys and gals working. You know, this, and I guess this project, you know, the delay in this project makes me a little bit angry because, you know, it's our local guys. Yes, this is an Alberta pipeline, and people always, you know, we've got this disagreement between Alberta and British Columbia, and there shouldn't be, because united, it is for us both. United is the fact that there's, you know, two Fort St. John companies that were you know, selected for this project as far as the construction of it goes. Hundreds and hundreds of employees that are now going, okay, how long is this going to take? How long is it going to take to satisfy the naysayers and the not in my backyard voters in order to get these people back to work?
Yeah, so true. It's one of the things that I want to happen with the national group is to reconcile the views of British Columbia and Alberta. We should work as one. The way we can succeed in our own common cause is that if we work together. If we have disagreements when it comes to Alberta crossing our pipelines towards the Northeast B.C., and then that is a problem. Coincidentally, you mentioned something about carbon tax. When I was in Ottawa last October 4, one of the things that I did was submit a Freedom of Information, or what we call here in Canada, access to information.
Yeah, an FOI.
I submitted a document requesting for the federal studies on how carbon taxation will impact Canadians, and up until now, there has been no response from the feds.
And I don't think we're going to get a response. I mean, you've got the Conservatives, you know, hammering the Liberals federally right now to figure out, you know, what is carbon tax, what are people actually paying for it, and what is it being used for? Nobody can answer the questions. Here we are in BC with probably one of the first carbon taxes that was ever rolled out in the capacity that it was, as far as the rates. And I mean, that was rolled out under the previous government, and now we've got the current government looking to increase that and already increasing that. Yet nobody actually stops and says, why am I paying this? Why am I paying this at the pumps? Why am I paying this to heat my home? Why am I literally now paying this on everything right down to a head of lettuce in a grocery store because it's such a widespread tax? You know what it is? It's a tax grab. And carbon tax is a way for elected officials, politicians, those that have formed government, to have easy access to a ton of capital. And we need to stop. The people need to stop, and the people need to say, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. We pay the carbon tax. We pay millions and millions and millions of dollars into this carbon program. Yet, show me the projects. Show me the pipelines that have been approved, that were NEB approved. You know, here we are with a stand down in court, nothing happening. We're still paying carbon taxes on them. It doesn't stop. And it's not going to stop until the people, those that are listening, those that are watching us later, go, okay, you know what? This is the greatest scam in the world. And here we are sitting with our government on every level, you know, trying to justify this charge, but no projects. And the two are hand in hand. So what are we doing? What are we doing? How is this going to stop? I like your idea of a group that is formed Canadian-wide, and even if it represents the interests of the West on one aspect and of the East on the other aspect, because, I mean, let's not kid ourselves, that the country is very, very different from coast to coast, but we all have the same passion, and that passion is to make Canada the best Canada we can have.
That is so true. Speaking of carbon tax, it really hasn't worked. It has not discouraged people from consuming less hydrocarbon. The hydrocarbon in our energy mix is still there, and no matter what you do, because of the need for consumption, people, as long as population is growing worldwide, there will always be a need, and there will always be a growing demand for hydrocarbon. So what is this carbon tax doing to us? It's not discouraging consumption. It is not approving pipelines. It is not approving projects. It doesn't translate to a better Canada. So what it is there for? You are so right there, Trevor.
And I agree. And when Premier Ford won the election, and part of his campaign mandate or promises at that point in time were to do away with the carbon tax, say no to the national carbon tax program, and seeing Jason Kenney in Alberta do the exact same thing is why are we allowing Ottawa to dictate what happens in our provinces, to dictate the amount of money that our people pay? You're not going to sit in Vancouver, and even looking at a BC aspect. So I'm sitting in Vancouver in a condo. I'm not going to drive downtown. I'm walking to work. I'm doing these things that, politicians feel that people should do. Now let's look at the opposite end of the province where, we woke up this morning, it was -6. You start to realize that fall is in the air. Coming close to that is winter. We don't have the option to use less gasoline, to use less natural gas to heat our homes. This year they're calling for one of the coldest winters on record of the previous decade, and to me that's vehicles running longer, that's more gasoline fuel, that's more natural gas fuel in our homes, that's more oil, yet here we are with everything still geared towards taking money out of people's pockets, and it needs to stop. We need to stand up and say enough is enough. If the carbon tax isn't working for what it should work for, let's figure out how we can make it better, whether that be education, whether that be the approval of these projects. 4 years they had to get this right as far as Trans Mountain goes, and I'm extremely disappointed in both the Premier of Alberta. I'm extremely disappointed in the Prime Minister. They had ample time to ensure that the checks, the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed, projects were awarded. It was time to get to work, and here we are with another delay that should have never ever happened.
That is so true. And when it comes to carbon tax, don't forget Saskatchewan and Brad Wall. That's the reason why I favor Brad Wall to be the spokesperson for the hydrocarbon group, because he has no problem standing up to Justin Trudeau. And when it comes to carbon taxation, you are so right. The coalition of municipalities in the north have identified that we are the hardest hit among the victims of carbon taxation because of the heating fuel. And our driving habits are different from those of the 80% of the population of Canada in the south, because, for us to go to Costco, it takes us 2 hours. And the distances that we have to travel are further than what you do travel in the south. And there is not much when it comes to public transportation. We have even lost Greyhound. So that means traveling for us will no longer be the public transportation option, but we do have to drive, and we are being punished when it comes to the carbon taxation that we are experiencing whenever we pump gas.
I agree 100%. We're going to take a quick break. You can catch up with us after this. Allan and I will get more into the discussion about Brad Wall, the discussion about unity in Canada, and what you can do to make a difference right now sitting in your home. So let's hit these commercial breaks. We'll be right back.
When it comes to real estate law, we can help you every step of the way. Hi, my name is Rob Zunert, and I've been a lawyer at Collison Zunert Law Corporation for 15 years. We specialize in residential and commercial real estate transactions. We strive to provide our clients with high-value services at very competitive rates. Not only that, but our lawyers offer the added benefit of legal advice, if necessary, in the event of unforeseen complications, often at no extra cost. So whether you're selling or purchasing property, refinancing a mortgage, please contact our real estate team at Collison Zunert Law Corporation in Fort St. John at 250-785-8033 or by visiting czlaw.ca.
Get your requests on now for the Wendy's Noon Hour Takeover. Now serving 2 locations in Fort St. John and Dawson Creek. Text us at 250-800-2360.
What makes summer even better? How about a 99-cent Frosty from Wendy's? Pick up your small vanilla or chocolate Frosty for just 99 cents today at Wendy's.
The Noon Hour Takeover, brought to you by Wendy's.
Canada, the true north strong and finance free. It's the Canada-wide clearance event at Chevrolet. Until August 31st, find amazing finance offers on select 2018 models like the Sporty Cruise and stylish Equinox, plus 0% financing for up to 84 months on the powerful Silverado 1500. The true north is strong and finance free for 84 months. Visit ChevroletOffers.ca for details.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca. This is Trev Talks with Trevor Bolin.
We're back. Quick commercial break. We are chatting with Allan. If you missed on the first part of the show, Allan is the founder, and the chairman of FSJ For LNG, which I'm sure you have seen on Facebook. They have a very, very popular Facebook presence. Allan, just before the break, we were talking a little bit about a unified yes group, a Canadian or a Western Canadian yes group, and you had mentioned Brad Wall a couple times, and Brad is a fantastic guy, and if you talk to anybody who's lived in Saskatchewan through the dark days of the NDP into the bright days of the Conservative government, you're going to get probably a round of applause based on a lot of things that Brad did. Have you guys reached out to Brad as a group to see if there's an interest in this? Is it something that he is able to do in his personal life or his business life right now?
As far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, we have not. However, what I'm working on is for the national groups to unify. And it's no secret that I have been clamoring for an organizational structure. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. All we need to do is to sort of imitate the organizational structure of the opposition. One of the things that's holding people like me back is that there is always the threat of a lawsuit being filed against us. And without a national group to support us, we are left on our own to take care of legal problems. This is a problem that the opposition or the environmentalists are not worried about, because if ever they get arrested, eco-justice is there to post their bail and to provide them with a lawyer. And this, as I told you, this is not present among the pro-hydrocarbon group, and this is holding us back.
Oh, I think it is, and I think part of what's holding us back is that we had Janet Presley on the show last week, and we were talking about involvement in elections and involvement in local politics, even at a local level, and seeing some of the numbers now at their lowest that they've ever been since they started tracking them back in the 90s, and we see that, I think, provincially and federally as well. And it's funny, I was reading Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, had put on his page today. I'm not going to hammer him, but he'd put on his page about sign up if you support me. Do you support in what I do? And I thought I'm going to take a little bit of time. It's about 6 o'clock this morning, and I read the first 250 comments on that, and it's the amount of comments that related back to Trans Mountain, the purchase of, more so than anything, and the amount of people that said, you know what, I voted for you in the last election. I believed in you. I believed this could have been different. You've upset me. You've disappointed me. I'm not voting for you in this coming election. And it seemed to resonate in about 200 of the 250 comments that I read this morning of people who believed that it was going to be different, and people who believed that his word on the economy and on the environment were going to go hand in hand, as we've seen, Premier Notley say in her address yesterday, as she told us how angry she is. Well, I don't know if she was smiling or crying. I couldn't quite figure it out. But we're angry. People are angry. Does it take, how much anger does it take before we start to change the way our governments are run? How much anger does it take before we start to change the policies that are made? And people believe that they can only do that during an election, right? Well, we can only vote you out in an election. We can only express our disinterest for the horrible way that you're running our province or that you're running our country in an election. And that's not true. They can do it every day in their lives. And part of doing that every day in their lives is getting involved. It's getting up and standing up for what you believe in. And I think Canada has become complacent in not getting deeply involved, because I think there's been too many broken promises that leave them to wonder, is it even worth it? Is it even worth me to get involved just to be let down? And I'm here to tell you that you need to get involved. People need to get involved in what's happening both in our province and in our country, the province beside us, whatever. We are all Canadians. We are all proud to be Canadians, but we need to start standing up to our government and holding them accountable for what they said they would do and didn't, what they spent money on and shouldn't, and groups nationally need to be able to stand together as one brand and say, this is good for Canada. This is good for British Columbia. We need this. We need to make this happen.
That's true. That's one of the things that we should be doing. However, let us not be complacent. We should not be doing this within the choir or just within Fort St. John for LNG, not just within Fort St. John. We should go out of the choir. We should go out of the church and preach this to the people in the Lower Mainland.
Agreed. The Lower Mainland, our neighboring provinces in the east. I know you have done that. I know you have taken trips to Ottawa and you have presented there and worked with the Senate committee and even provincially you've done the same thing. And there's been some rallies that have happened down in the south. And I think we need to get bigger. I think we need to think bigger. I think we need to act larger, act stronger. I love the idea of your national consortium in order to battle the no's. I look at some of the funding that these guys that are fighting the projects, and that goes on all aspects of Canada. And you look at some of the money that's coming in from other countries, some of the groups and the funding they use in order to fight this stuff. It absolutely blows my mind. And I think if people realize, every post they see against energy and against resources, the millions and millions of dollars that are coming out of conflict in order to put that post in front of you is atrocious.
That is true. We don't need that much fund. However, if we need to do a sustained rally like the one that we did, the one that was organized by Resource Works, the rally in Vancouver, and the Suits and Boots rally in Langley, if we can just have funding for sustained efforts like that, that would be really, really great.
Agreed, and I think the funds are there, and I think some of the companies that are trying to get their projects, not only off the ground but recognized and accepted. The whole quote social license end quote that we hate to use, but politicians use it all the time. I think if they realized what could be done if we all stood together, and again, it goes back to education. When Mayor Ackerman was here, and we had Mayor Germuth the week before that talking about LNG, talking about what's happening in the area, and it comes down to education. And Lori has said that for years, that until we get people to understand, we're not going to get them to change their ways. Until somebody in downtown Vancouver or Victoria that's not up to speed or up to date on what we do here when it comes to gas exploration or oil exploration or even hydro dams. They flick the switch, the power of electricity tells them that their lights are going to come on. Where does that come from? When they fill up their car, where does that come from? We need to put the picture right down to the single guy or gal that's on that job, on that rig, on that line, on that dam, so that they can understand that it is still the power of the people that makes the difference.
Yeah, that's true. The problem is the 80% of the population of Canada live near the border, and they are so unattached to the resource. So let us make it our duty to sort of preach what we know and share what we know and educate the Lower Mainlanders when it comes to the benefits of hydrocarbons and how it is affecting our jobs and how it should sort of open up the Canadian economy so we can have less taxes, more social things built. We can build more schools, fund education and medical with resources.
Exactly. And one for one. John Horgan had got elected, and I sent him I don't remember if it was a tweet or a Facebook message, and I said, listen, you and I are never going to see eye to eye. It's just not going to happen. So I'm not going to pretend, and let's not make this up. But if you can be a premier who is responsible and controls the social aspect of things that have lacking, because that we've seen that in the last election. That was one of the biggest concerns, was the lacking social infrastructure that the Liberals had done in the previous years. If you can take, the Liberal, the Conservative side of resources, of energy, of exploration, of development, in order to fund the social programs that have been forgotten about, such as schools and hospitals and nurses and doctors and those components that we need so much in our lives right now. If you can literally take those two and put them together, find that happy medium as to how we can live with both and live well with both, you will be an unstoppable premier. We didn't see that happen. We haven't seen that happen from anyone, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's true. So Premier Horgan should know that more than 50% of the top 100 corporations in BC are resource-based, and he should open his eyes.
They are, and they will. But I always come back to that because it makes me wonder is again education. He sits in Vancouver, and part of the problem I think that Christie had in the last election is she'd spent 4 years cheering and campaigning for Site C and LNG and all these great things that are going to make the province phenomenal, but that were happening in the north. And people, I think, in the south felt forgotten because the education wasn't there. That when we pull off an LNG project, such as Canada LNG or wood fiber or any of these ones in BC that get off the ground, the win for the province of British Columbia and the people that call this beautiful province home is enormous. It is not a north win. It is not a northwest win. It is a provincial win for everybody and our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids. It is worldwide. And until people realize how huge that is and how much of a difference it's going to make, here we are.
Yeah, that's true.
So we got to wrap up. I'm getting the nod from the producers. So thank you very much, Allan, for joining us. For those of you that either caught us late or were here the entire show or are watching us later, have a voice. Absolutely get a hold of your government officials and representatives, whether it's email, Facebook, tweet, write them a letter. It doesn't matter. Let them know how you feel. Let them know how much these projects, which are going to fund the social side of our living here in the province of British Columbia, how much they mean to you and future generations going forward. Allan, I wish you all the luck going forward on this national program. Of course, if there's anything that I can do to help out, let me know. And we will see you when you get back to Fort St. John.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Drive safe.
Fort St. John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that wraps up another edition of Trev Talks. Have a fantastic long weekend, a good Labor Day, and we'll talk to you next week.
Our community first. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Bolin. You've been listening to Trev Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.